Okay, a few bullet points I'd like to cover from a video I've tried to make a few different times on Wendi's book. This is our story. This goes back I think over a year now to summer of last year maybe, and the first time I tried to make a video on Wendi's book, it was a total fiasco. I recorded over 2 hours of me talking with my notes, and at the end of it I realized I'd only covered 6 pages into the book. So the idea for this video is that I will explain where I'm at on following the Markel case. If you've been following my videos on that, it's been really cool that some of the older videos I released over a year ago, like Wendi's psychopath test and some others, I've been getting a ton of views lately. I'm getting a lot of comments, so I thought I should touch base and follow up. And I'll also be giving away the copy that I have of This Is Our Story, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants Style, hopefully. And I bought the copy that I have used, and I did that because I didn't want to spend money that would go directly to Wendi in any way. And I think a lot of other people have that same inclination that follow the case, and totally understood, but it's hard to find a used copy, or at least it was when I was looking for it. And Wendi, I think, strategically prices the book on Amazon for $25. So, she makes it cost you if you want to actually dive into her weird book. So anyway, that's my small gesture to that end, to help somebody else check out the weird mind of Wendi if they dare. So what I'm going to do is consolidate the most interesting stuff that I skimmed off my notes, the stuff that I think is the most relevant and big picture, especially at this point now that Dawn has been convicted. And if anybody's not familiar with the gist of what Wendi's book is, This Is Our Story is what used to be called a roman à clef, but probably today would be called a self-insert work of fiction, because the book is a fictional version, but that hews very close to real life, of Wendi and Dan Markel's story, except for in the book, she gives them pseudonyms and slightly different details, but it's very close to home. And after having read it a couple times, I decided that it's the first work of auto-fanfic, what I've dubbed, because we see that Wendi really loves self-insert Wendi that she creates, and there's just so much you can glean about how Wendi's mind works and the way she thinks from reading the book, above and beyond the little snippets we've gotten from seeing her in very controlled environments, like in court or on the one book podcast she did. So yeah. So anyway, the book is the story of Wendi and Dan. Wendi's name in the book is Lily, and Dan's name is Josh, moving to a new town so Dan can start his new job as a professor, which is exactly what happened in real life, essentially. And in the book, and I also think in real life, Lily has trouble finding purpose and is indecisive about starting a family. And yeah, one assumes that a similar scenario took place in real life. One of the things that I was so stuck on in my first attempt to talk about this book is the cover. There's so much irony and weirdness when you inspect the actual cover of this thing. It's crazy. I'll put in a nice actual scan of it so you can see, but it's just bizarre. It seems to have all these weird layers and foreshadowing in terms of what would happen in real life. It's important to note that the book was originally self-published by Wendi in around 2011, so before the divorce, before the marriage fell apart. But it was republished by an academic press in 2013 when Wendi somehow arranged to have the book distributed by Florida State University to all the incoming freshmen as part of the One Book, One Campus program. So she was good at marketing it, I guess. If we look at the actual cover image of this book, the person that we see on the cover, if you're not familiar with her visage, is actually Wendi Adelson. It's not a stand-in or a model. It's not, it's not depicting Lily. It's actually a picture of Wendi Adelson, complete with the enhanced blue eyes, mirroring the fact that she wore contacts to enhance her already blue eyes to a color that couldn't help but be commented on by liquor store clerks and everybody. And the pose that we see her in is in this sort of defensive stance with her hand above her eyes, as if she's being attacked. I mean, that's one interpretation, but it's what I took away from it. And the main layer that I see in terms of foreshadowing, and I also think the choice is quite revealing, is that the cover photo of the book is like a sort of pantomime of what Wendy's role in the murder plot of her ex-husband Dan Markel would be in the cover, and in real life she was affecting the pose of a victim. And it's also have to note here that the photo and the cover art layout was done by one Harvey Jerome Adelson, Wendy's father. And this also mirrors the later family dynamics that we see, where Wendy's parents are, hard to put an exact term on this, but like co-facilitators of the scheme for Wendi to leave Dan Markel in such a coordinated and planned way where she was depicted as like a terrified victim in doing so. And also, they were obviously instrumental in the coordination of the hiring of the hitmen and the murder plot. We can now say that with legal certainty. One other thing that was of really great interest to me, and that I spent a lot of time thinking about, despite it being such a short little passage of text, is Wendy's author bio on the back of the book jacket. Her description sort of sums up a lot of the writing in the book, because all of the writing is really about her. Like, even the other characters are really reflective of her. But it's like this stew of self-regard, but at a remove, and also like just out of nowhere zany facts about herself that are, I guess, supposed to make her look quirky or relatable or like a manic pixie dream lawyer. I just want to read it because it's short and it's worth focusing on. And the last sentence is really the thing that caught my attention the most. That it's something that I overlooked, or I think misread the first couple times I looked at it. But as I spent some time with this book going over it, it eventually revealed itself to me. Wendi Adelson is a Floridian, born and raised, who teaches law students and represents clients in the fields of immigration, child advocacy, and disability rights. She has written for legal journals and produced a manual on special immigration juvenile status. Vague, but leads one to a certain impression. She has been a contestant on The Weakest Link, and whenever I read this, I think the game show or the murder plot. A contortionist, and now a novelist. Wow. And here's the final sentence. She resides in Florida with her boys. She resides in Florida with her boys. So the first couple times I scanned this author bio, as one does, I mean, you don't typically parse over a little paragraph on the back of the book. I think I misread what it actually said. It appears to me now that this description of Wendi residing in Florida with her boys is maybe even purposefully vague and misleading. I think it is, just based on her pattern of conduct. I thought at first that she was leaving Dan Markel out of the description of her immediate family. And maybe at the time when I first took a look at it, I wasn't as clued into the timeline of both the book and the divorce and just glossed over it. Because the book was reprinted in 2013, that's the much more common edition. It's hard to even find one of the self-printed ones. And the marriage was basically over in 2013 when the academic press published it. But I actually checked this out, and upon later reflection, I realized that this author bio was written actually in 2011, which I confirmed based on like looking at the jacket of one of the self-published copies and as the text appeared online at the time. And the syntax of she resides in Florida with her boys is just, I guess, so similar to the formulation that you see in so many authors' bios where, it would normally say something like she resides in Florida with her two boys. And that's what I thought it was. I thought it was like a description of her immediate family post-divorce at first. It didn't dawn on me until I took a look at this thing for a bit. And I think my mind sort of automatically penciled that common syntax or phrasing into that. And it just didn't, it didn't grok with me at first. But I think it has like a purposeful syntactic ambiguity, and there's like plausible deniability built into it in that when she wrote it in 2011, if Dan were to read it and confront her on it, thinking maybe making the same reading mistake or just sort of being weirded out by it, she could say, well, you're one of my boys, It has like a layer of plausible deniability in it. But at the same time, the phrase also conveys to an uninvolved party reading it that Wendy's not in a committed relationship, or at least it could easily leave that impression. So it's just this so typical of Wendi in that it's purposely vague and serving this sort of other ulterior motive and indirect purpose. Yeah, and plotting for the future. So there's so many like weird layers of foreshadowing and sort of Machiavellian thought that's put into even the author bio on the back of her book. Even like the inclusion of an element like she's a contortionist. Like, what is that supposed to convey? It's very odd. Anyway, maybe I'm reading too much. You tell me. Okay, I just want to add a couple more quick notes on interesting things that I saw, because I can already feeling this video spiraling out of control and being like an hour long. I just want to make it like a quick hit. But I'm trying to offer observations here that I had after reading the book a couple of times that are more big picture, and it's just so easy to get lost in the weeds of this thing because like every sentence has like this crazy thing that you can comment on. After slogging through the text a couple of times and probably through the first part of the book, a few more times than that Wendi doesn't actually identify any of the characters in the book in the first intro chunk of the book. The book has a bizarre structure that I'll address here shortly, but the first part of it is an intro where Wendi as Lily Walker Stone, her alter ego, self-insert character, basically like blathers on about herself and like goes into incredible weird like quirky detail about how she her writing style and how she uses footnotes because she's a lawyer, and it's just this insanely self-involved discussion of her personality quirks. And at different points she gives you like a little bit of sort of signposting or exposition about what the book is going to be, but I actually checked, and the first 15 pages only addresses 3 named people, and there's like one brief, easy to overlook mention that Wendy's partner or significant other is named Josh, and at the very end of the intro, Wendi as Lily Walkerstone lets you know that there's going to be 2 other characters that will be talking to you in the book, and they're these 2 women from sort of 4th and 3rd world countries that are going to give you a perspective on essentially what the book's broadcasting it's about, which is human trafficking. So you can already sort of see the layers of the outline of the plot forming, where these women are going to get in to some sort of situation where they're taken into a trafficking situation, and Wendy's going to save them. It's like just glaringly obvious from the description at the end of the intro, but it's just bizarre because what I'm thinking is like, imagine you're a kid, a freshman in Florida State in 2013, I think it was, that gets this book as part of the One Campus, One book program. Like everybody on campus, all the incoming freshmen are supposed to read this book at the same time and then discuss it at the convocation or whatever. So you don't know who, I'm getting confused whether to call her Lily or Wendy. You don't know who Wendy is. You don't know the details of her life, right? So like this intro must be the most confusing thing ever, and it's so obviously written by like a total narcissist who assumes that everybody knows all the details of her life and, you know, doesn't feel the need to put that in there. It's just so obvious this thing didn't have like any sort of editor or outside perspective from like a non-crazy person, because that would be one of the first things I would pick up on. Is like, you got to kind of spell things out and like, you just give names to the characters and tell people who you are and like why. It's just so strange. And I don't know, it's just because I have all these layers of context, we all do in reading this book now, that it's so easy to overlook something so obvious as that. The book has the most bizarre structure. The chapters then begin to alternate between the perspective of Lily Walkerstone, Wendy, and these two other women, Mila from Slovakia and Rosa from Argentina. So it's like a chapter from the perspective of Lily, one from Rosa, one from Mila, then one from Lily, Rosa, Mila, like all throughout the book. One of those things that a beginning writer would do, like trying to like be unique and show their brilliance by like using a structure that nobody else would even attempt to, because it's hard enough to write from one perspective, but to do it from three convincingly is like impossible. And the result is, as you'd imagine, the two women, Mila and Rosa, are basically like cardboard cutouts. Finally, one other observation I'll make before doing my outro here is that, to give you a sense of how poorly Wendy writes other characters in general, and especially the two women that she saves in the book, in Rosa's intro chapter, the first chapter where we hear from Rosa spouts out exposition about the details of her tragic life in the manner that like an especially poorly programmed NPC in like a very terrible role-playing game would, you know, where they're just basically like doing like techno babble, like, I am from this place, and when I was this old I went to here, but it's supposed to be a diary entry, so it's like, it just so boggles the mind why Rosa would need to line all this out, apparently for her own notes and recollection. It's just so obvious that Wendy gives no thoughts whatsoever to like the inner worlds of the other people in her book. It's all just sort of reflected upon like what Wendy needs them to say. At one point in this bizarre patois that Wendy has Rosa speaking in, of like a broken Spanish English, which is just such a strange choice. It would never happen today. Rosa helpfully writes in her diary that, you know, she's starting to forget what her father looked like, and this was because her father died when Rosa was only 12. It's like, why? I guess Rosa also needs to remind herself, in addition to the readers, of this fact. The broken English and the depth of the other characters feels like you're reading a 5-year-old putting on a play, like that type of thing, where it's just Mad Libs. And the one final note on the diary chapters from Rosa and Mila is like it's like an additional salt in the wound, slap in the face, that Wendy chose to render these completely in a italicized cursive font that's like super unreadable and just I hate this book. I really do. It's not like good, bad, really. At times it is just fun making fun of it, but yeah. Anyway, hopefully whoever gets it doesn't get tortured too badly. A lot of the comments I got were asking like why I wasn't making videos covering Donna's case, and for me, like I stopped following the Markel case this last summer when Donna's case was moved, because the whole series of events leading to it getting moved felt like it was like dirty poker on the behalf of Donna and her legal team. And the inefficiencies and the delays in the legal system are like a real trigger for me, because I worked for years as like a paralegal, and in one of the roles I did was like staying in touch with witnesses and victims and letting them know when court dates changed. And I always felt so terrible like every time it happened, and it just happens all the time, and like nothing ever, you know, resolves, or at least it just takes forever. I just feel like it's so inconsiderate of the exasperation and inconvenience to these people. And there's an additional layer of that in the Markel case. And it was especially galling to me because of how long Dan's friends and family have been waiting to see this horrible murder be prosecuted. And, you know, and especially with folks like, Ruth and Phil Markel, I just felt like this move by Donna was like a filibuster, and it showed a palpable desperation. And I also just knew that she was done. You know, she was going to get convicted. There was no dramatic tension. I felt like there's no point in putting myself through the agita of watching this thing, seeing Donna's sneering face day after day, when I already knew what the conclusion would be. Ugh. So I'm just glad it turned out the way that it did, and hopefully there'll be a couple more trials in the near future. But to close it out, I'm going to mail my copy of This Is Our Story to, if anybody wants it, to the first person who emails me with their address. My email is on my YouTube page, but YouTube sort of hides it in a weird spot. So I feel like this adds a little bit of a contest treasure hunt element. I'm sure you can find my email other ways as well. But anyway, the first person that drops me a line and lets me know where to send it, I will happily cover the costs to anywhere in the world for somebody that wants to read this book. And in honor of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants element here, the one small request that I'd have is that if you do read it and find yourself in the position to pass it on to somebody else, that you would do so. But, I'm not going to make that a stipulation. So yeah, thanks for watching. Always appreciate your thoughts in the comments. And if anybody's read the book, I'd be interested to hear your opinion, whether or not you think I'm off base or on base. And if you have any suggestions for the channel or other feedback, let me know. I appreciate all of it. So thank you so much, and I hope we'll be seeing each other again soon.